For centuries, the galaxy's greatest warriors tried and failed. The blade of legend rejected kings, champions, even gods. It waited for something else. Then one day, a human stepped forward, not with pride but curiosity. No armor, no ceremony, just a quiet "mind if I try?" The sword that had slept for 1,000 years awakened, and the galaxy learned who it had truly been waiting for. The sword of impossible choice. The warning sirens echoed across every inhabited world in the Galactic Assembly. In the grand observation deck of Station Meridian, representatives from 47 species watched in horror as the holographic display showed another star system going dark. The entropy swarm had claimed its 9th victim in less than a month. Commander Vexthor stood at the center of the room, his crystalline body refracting the dim emergency lighting into fractured rainbows. He had served the Assembly for 200 years, surviving 3 major conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this. The entropy swarm was not an army that could be negotiated with or defeated through conventional warfare. It was a force of pure consumption, erasing matter and energy as it spread through space like a hungry shadow. "How long until it reaches the core worlds?" asked Ambassador Selith, her tentacles curling with anxiety around the railing before her. 6 months at current progression," Vexthor replied, his voice resonating like wind chimes in a storm. "Perhaps less if it accelerates again." The room fell silent. 6 months to save trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. 6 months to find a solution that had eluded the greatest minds in the galaxy. "There is one option," said High Scholar Zintara, speaking from her position near the ancient archives. The elderly Luminar's skin glowed faintly with bioluminescence, pulsing in patterns that indicated deep concern. "The blade of Cathara." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some hopeful, most skeptical. "The sword has rejected every candidate for 5 centuries, Vexthor said. 12,000 attempts. Not one success. Then we find the 12,001st, Zintara insisted. "The prophecy states that when existence itself faces extinction, the blade will choose its wielder. If this crisis does not qualify, nothing ever will." The motion passed with little debate. What choice did they have? The Grand Sanctum stood on the moon of Cathara Prime, a structure so ancient that its builders had vanished from history before most current civilizations had discovered fire. Its walls were composed of a material that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, shimmering with colors that had no names in any known language. Inside the central chamber, the blade of Cathara rested on a platform of pure light. The sword itself was beautiful in a way that transcended aesthetics. Its blade appeared to be forged from solidified starlight, and along its length ran inscriptions that shifted and changed depending on who looked at them. Some saw mathematical equations, others saw poetry. A few claimed to see their own futures reflected in the metal. For 500 years, the blade had waited. Warriors of incredible strength had tried to claim it. Psychics of extraordinary power had attempted to bond with it. Scholars had studied every angle, every ancient text, every fragment of the prophecy. All had failed. The testing had become a ritual. Each candidate would approach the platform, state their name and intent, and reach for the blade. The sword would evaluate them in ways no one fully understood, and then inevitably it would reject them, sometimes gently, simply refusing to move, sometimes violently, sending the candidate flying across the chamber with a pulse of energy. On the day Maya Torres arrived at Cathara Prime, she had no idea any of this was happening. Maya was an engineer, 28 years old, employed by the Interstellar Communications Consortium. Humans had only been part of the Galactic Assembly for 30 years, and most of humanity still found the reality of alien civilizations overwhelming. Maya was not most humans. She had grown up on stories of first contact, had studied xenotechnology at Luna Academy, and had jumped at the chance to work among the stars. Her current assignment was simple: repair a malfunctioning communications relay on Cathara Prime's moon. The relay had been experiencing intermittent failures, causing delays in assembly communications. Not glamorous work, but necessary. Maya's shuttle landed at the public dock several kilometers from the Grand Sanctum. She gathered her equipment, checked her portable scanner, and set off toward the relay station. The moon's atmosphere was breathable for humans, though slightly thinner than Earth standard. She walked with the easy confidence of someone who had spent years working in low-gravity environments. The path to the relay station should have been straightforward, but Maya's scanner was giving her odd readings. energy fluctuations that made no sense for a simple communications array. She frowned, adjusting the settings, and followed the anomalous signals, which is how she ended up at the Grand Sanctum entirely by accident. Inside the main chamber, the latest round of testing was underway. War Master Krelnak of the Draken Empire stood before the blade, his scaled body rippling with enhanced muscle tissue. He had conquered 17 worlds in personal combat. His strength was legendary across 3 sectors. He reached for the blade with absolute confidence. The sword sent him flying backward, so hard that he cracked the chamber's far wall. Medical teams rushed forward. High Scholar Zintara made notes on her datapad, her expression grim. That was candidate number 12,047. The numbers were becoming meaningless. Perhaps we should reconsider our selection criteria, suggested Acolyte Mirsan, a young Luminar assisting with the ceremonies. We keep choosing warriors and scholars. The prophecy speaks of the one who sees what others miss. Maybe we need someone different. The prophecy is vague enough to mean anything, Vexthor said, though his tone lacked conviction. He was running out of hope. That was when Maya walked through the side entrance. Following her scanner's increasingly erratic readings, she stopped in the doorway, taking in the massive chamber, the gathered aliens, and the sword floating on its platform of light. Her scanner was screaming warnings about energy levels that should not be possible. Sorry, Maya said, raising one hand in greeting. I think I took a wrong turn. I'm looking for Relay Station 7. My equipment says there's some kind of massive energy source here that might be causing interference, but this looks like a temple or something. Everyone in the chamber turned to stare at the human. Most had never seen one in person. Humans were still considered oddities, a young species barely out of their home system. This is the Grand Sanctum, Zintara said, studying Maya with interest. You should not be here. This is a closed ceremony. Right, sorry, Maya said. She looked at her scanner again, then at the sword. Is that thing generating the energy field? Because it's putting out readings that are off the charts. Might want to get that checked. Could be interfering with communications across half the moon. She started to leave, then paused. Actually, do you mind if I take a closer reading? I need to file a report and my supervisor gets cranky if I don't document unusual phenomena. Vexthor was about to refuse when Zintara held up a hand. Let her approach. Maya walked to the platform entirely focused on her scanner. She circled the sword, taking readings from multiple angles, muttering to herself about harmonic frequencies and dimensional bleed-through. The assembled witnesses watched in fascination as this young human completely ignored the sacred nature of what she was examining and treated it like any other piece of equipment. Fascinating, Maya said. The energy signature is rotating through multiple quantum states simultaneously. That shouldn't be possible with any known technology. But the math works if you assume the blade exists partially outside normal space-time. She looked up at Zintara. Who built this? The engineering is incredible. The first civilization, Zintara replied. Long before recorded history. Makes sense. I mean, we're still figuring out stable quantum state manipulation, and this thing is doing it like it's nothing. Maya reached out absently, her hand moving toward the blade as she studied her scanner's data. Her fingers touched the hilt. The chamber exploded with light. Maya yelped and jumped backward, dropping her scanner. The blade erupted with energy unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Colors that existed beyond the visible spectrum poured from the weapon. The inscriptions along its length blazed like newborn stars, and then slowly, smoothly, the blade lifted from its platform and moved through the air to Maya's hand. It settled into her grip, as if it had been made for her. The light faded. Maya stood holding the blade of Cathera, looking utterly confused. What just happened? She asked. The chamber was silent. 12,000 attempts had failed. 12,000 of the galaxy's greatest champions had been rejected. And a human engineer who had wandered in by accident while looking for a communications relay had just been chosen. Vexithor's crystalline body went completely still, a sign of profound shock in his species. Zantara's bioluminescence pulsed in patterns of amazement. War Master Krelnak, being helped to his feet by medical staff, stared in disbelief. Maya looked at the sword in her hand, then at the assembled aliens. So this is important, isn't it? I probably shouldn't have touched it. That was really unprofessional of me. She tried to put the sword back on the platform. It would not leave her hand. Okay, that's weird, Maya said, tugging at the blade. How do I put this down? You cannot, Zintara said, moving closer. Her voice held wonder. The blade of Cathara has chosen you. After 500 years of waiting, it has finally found its wielder. I don't want to wield anything, Maya protested. I fix communications equipment. I'm not a soldier or a hero or whatever you're looking for. The blade does not care what you want, Vexthor said, his voice strange. It cares what you are. Within an hour, Maya found herself in a high-level meeting with the Galactic Assembly's leadership. The blade remained in her hand, refusing to be set down. She had tried everything, even asked politely, but the sword seemed perfectly content where it was. Commander Vexthor explained the situation as Maya listened with growing horror. The entropy swarm. The threat to all life in the galaxy. The ancient prophecy that only the wielder of the Blade of Cathara could stop the annihilation. The fact that she, Maya Torres, communications engineer from Earth, was now apparently that wielder. This has to be a mistake, Maya said. I'm not qualified for this. I barely passed combat training at the academy, and that was just basic self-defense stuff. You need a warrior, a champion, not someone who spends most of her time calibrating antenna arrays. The blade disagrees, Zintara said gently. It has never been wrong. But why me? What do I have that 12,000 other candidates didn't? That, Vexthor said, is what we need to discover. And quickly. The entropy swarm will not wait for us to understand. Maya looked at the sword in her hand. In the meeting room's normal lighting, it appeared almost simple, just a blade, elegant and sharp. But she could feel something beneath the surface. Not consciousness exactly, but a kind of awareness. The sword was evaluating her, measuring her, testing her in ways she could not comprehend. Can I at least call my supervisor? Maya asked. I was supposed to fix that relay station today. He's going to be really annoyed if I just disappear. Several of the alien leaders made sounds that might have been laughter or exasperation or both. We will handle your employment obligations, Vexthar assured her. Right now we need to begin training immediately. The military command has prepared a facility where you can learn to use the blade. Maya wanted to protest further, but looking around the room she saw the desperation in every face, in every gesture. These were not beings prone to panic, yet they were afraid. Genuinely, deeply afraid. And somehow, inexplicably, she was their hope. All right, Maya said finally. But I have questions. Lots of questions. Starting with why a sword? Like, we have energy weapons and particle beams and all kinds of advanced technology. Why does the fate of the galaxy depend on something you swing around? Zintara's bioluminescence pulsed in what Maya was learning to recognize as approval. Now that, the scholar said, is exactly the kind of question the blade has been waiting for someone to ask. The training facility was located in the northern continent of Cathara Prime, far from population centers. General Corval, a Dracon military commander with 3 centuries of combat experience, was assigned to train Maya in basic combat techniques. The first session did not go well. No, Corval said, his tail lashing in frustration. You must grip the blade firmly, plant your feet, strike with purpose and power. Maya tried to follow his instructions, but the sword felt wrong in her hands when she used the traditional stances. It became heavy and unwieldy, fighting against her movements rather than flowing with them. I don't think it likes that approach, Maya said after her 10th failed attempt at a basic strike pattern. The blade must adapt to you, not the other way around, Corval insisted. You must dominate it, show it your will. But every time Maya tried to force the blade to obey, it became more resistant. By the end of the first day, she had made no progress, and Corval was openly questioning whether the sword had made a mistake after all. Maya sat alone in her quarters that evening, the blade resting across her lap. She had tried everything the military instructors suggested, and nothing worked. The sword only seemed to respond when she was not thinking about it, when she moved naturally rather than following prescribed forms. I don't understand what you want from me, Maya said to the blade. It did not answer, of course. It was a sword, not a person, except it was not just a sword. She could feel that much. Maya pulled out her personal tablet and started doing what she always did when faced with a problem she did not understand. She researched. She found every text, every fragment, every historical account about the Blade of Cathara that existed in the Assembly's public archives. Most of it was religious mythology or military analysis. Descriptions of previous wielders, all of them legendary warriors who had shaped history. Accounts of battles won and empires toppled. The blade as a weapon of incredible power. But buried deep in the archives, Maya found something different. A fragment from the first civilization, one of the few readable texts they had left behind. It was not about the blade as a weapon. It was about the blade as a tool. The passage, translated roughly, read, "The blade of Cathara does not seek strength. It seeks understanding. It does not desire warriors. It desires those who question." The blade was forged not to destroy but to protect, not through force but through wisdom. The worthy wielder is not the one who masters the blade, but the one who learns from it. Maya read the passage 3 times. Then she looked at the sword with new eyes. "You're not a weapon," she said slowly. "You're a problem that needs solving." The blade pulsed once with light, faint but unmistakable. Maya smiled. "Okay then, let's figure this out together." The next morning, Maya returned to the training facility and told Corval she wanted to try something different. "No traditional forms," she said. "No prescribed stances. I want to approach this like an engineering problem." Corval looked skeptical but agreed. What did they have to lose? Maya stood in the center of the training room, the blade held loosely in her hand. Instead of trying to force it to move in specific patterns, she simply observed it. She paid attention to how it felt, how it balanced, how it responded to different types of movement. She started with simple actions. A gentle swing, testing the weight distribution. A rotation, feeling how the blade moved through space. Small adjustments to her grip, her stance, her posture, paying attention to when the sword felt lighter or heavier. It was like calibrating sensitive equipment. Make a change. Observe the result. Adjust accordingly. After an hour of this experimental approach, Maya tried a full strike. The blade moved like liquid light, cutting through the air with perfect efficiency. The training dummy she was aiming at split cleanly in 2. Corval's jaw dropped. "How did you do that?" "I stopped trying to control it," Maya said, examining the blade with satisfaction. "I started working with it instead. The sword has its own logic, its own patterns. Once I understood those patterns, I could work within them, rather than against them." News of Maya's breakthrough spread quickly. Over the following weeks, she continued to develop her unique relationship with the Blade of Cathara. She approached combat like an engineer approaches a complex system, identifying variables, testing hypotheses, and adapting based on results. The blade responded to this approach with enthusiasm. It began to do things no one had ever seen before. When Maya needed reach, it extended. When she needed defense, it created shields of energy. When she needed to understand an opponent's movements, it showed her probability patterns in the air. "This is unprecedented," Zintara said, watching Maya train. "Previous wielders could channel the blade's power, but you are collaborating with it. You treat it as a partner rather than a tool." "Well, it is a partner," Maya said. "I mean, look at this engineering. The blade is processing millions of calculations per second, adjusting its quantum state based on environmental factors. I could never do that alone. But when I work with the sword, when I understand what it's trying to tell me, we can do things neither of us could do separately." "The prophecy," Bexthor said quietly, "speaks of the one who sees what others miss. We thought it meant a warrior with keen perception, but it meant someone who sees the blade itself differently." "We've been wrong for 5 centuries, Zintara added. "We kept sending warriors to dominate a weapon. But the Blade of Cathara was not created to be dominated. It was created to work alongside someone capable of understanding it." Maya shrugged. "Honestly, I still think you've got the wrong person. But if this is what the blade wants, I'll do my best." 2 months after Maya took up the Blade of Cathara, The entropy swarm reached the inner systems. It was time to stop training and start fighting. The war councils met to plan their defense. Maya attended, still uncomfortable with her role but determined to help however she could. The entropy swarm operates through cascading consumption, explained Science Director Hal Rex, displaying tactical data on holographic screens. It breaks down matter at the molecular level and uses the released energy to fuel its expansion. Conventional weapons can slow it but not stop it. The energy we expend fighting it only feeds its growth. What about the blade? Asked Admiral Venkor, commanding the Assembly's defense fleet. The prophecy claims it can stop the swarm. The blade can disrupt the swarm's fundamental structure, Zintara said, but only at close range. Maya would need to reach the swarm's core, the central processing node that coordinates the entire entity. Destroying that node would cause the entire swarm to collapse. The core is located deep inside the swarm's mass, Hal Rex continued. Approximately 10,000 kilometers of hostile matter. No ship could penetrate that far. The swarm would consume any vessel that attempted it. Everyone looked at Maya. So I need to get to the center of this thing somehow, Maya said, studying the tactical displays.
Any ideas on how to do that without getting consumed?
The room fell silent. No one had an answer. Maya thought about the problem the way she would approach any engineering challenge. She had constraints, limited time, hostile environment, a specific target to reach. She had resources, the blade, her training, and an entire galaxy's worth of technology and knowledge. What if we don't fight through the swarm? Maya said slowly. What if we use it? Explain, Vex Thor said. Maya pointed at the holographic display. The swarm consumes matter and energy. It's constantly breaking things down and reassembling them into its own structure. What if we built something the swarm would want to consume? Something that would carry me to the core from the inside? The military leaders looked confused, but Hal Rex's expression shifted to understanding. A Trojan approach, the science director said. You would allow yourself to be consumed, but in a protective capsule designed to survive the breakdown process long enough to reach the core. Exactly. The swarm would pull me in because it wants the energy. We just need to design the capsule to be more resistant to breakdown than normal matter. Give me time to reach the center before the capsule fails. That is insane, Admiral Venkor said. That is brilliant, Zintara countered. The swarm has defeated us because we have been fighting against it. Maya proposes we use its own nature against it. It's still incredibly dangerous, Korval pointed out. If the capsule fails before you reach the core, you die. If the blade cannot destroy the core quickly enough, you die. If you cannot escape after destroying the core, you die. Maya nodded. Yeah, I know. But someone has to try. And I'm apparently the only one who can use this sword, so I guess it's me. She tried to sound confident, but her hands were shaking. Over the next 3 weeks, the best engineers and scientists in the galaxy worked to design Maya's capsule. It was a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining technologies from dozens of species. Draken armor plating, Luminar energy shielding, human redundancy systems, Korvathi life support. Maya participated in every stage of the design process. After all, she was an engineer. This was familiar ground, comfortable ground. Much more comfortable than the destiny and prophecy stuff. The night before the mission, Maya stood alone in the observation deck, looking at the stars. The blade rested against the railing beside her. You know, she said to the sword, I'm terrified. Just in case you were wondering. I'm pretty sure I'm going to die tomorrow. The blade pulsed with soft light. The thing is, I keep thinking about everyone counting on me. All those people on all those worlds. Kids, families, beings just trying to live their lives. And somehow I'm supposed to save them. She laughed quietly. No pressure, right? You do not have to do this. Maya turned to find Zintara approaching, her bioluminescence dim in the night. The blade chose you, yes, the scholar continued. But you still have choice. You could refuse. And then what? Let the galaxy end because I was too scared? Perhaps another solution would present itself. Maya shook her head. We both know that's not true. This is the only shot we've got. She looked at the blade. Besides, I think the sword knows something we don't. It chose me for a reason. I just hope that reason becomes clear before it's too late. Zintara placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. For what it is worth, I believe the blade chose well. You see possibilities where others see only obstacles. That is a rare gift. Thanks, Maya said. I just hope I'm still around afterward to appreciate it. The mission launched at dawn. Maya sat inside her capsule, the blade of Cathara strapped across her back. Through the viewing port, she could see the entropy swarm in the distance, a massive dark cloud that seemed to swallow light itself. All systems green, reported her support team over the comm system. Approaching drop zone in 5 minutes. Maya took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. She had checked and rechecked every system. She had run through the plan 100 times. She was as prepared as she could be. The blade pulsed against her back, warm and reassuring. 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Maya gripped her safety harness. Through the viewport, the swarm grew larger, filling her entire field of vision. Good luck, Maya Taurus, Vexthor said over the comm. The galaxy stands with you. Let's hope that's enough, Maya whispered. The capsule launched. For a moment, Maya felt weightless as she flew through space toward the heart of the entropy swarm. Then the darkness swallowed her, and everything went black. The engineer who changed destiny. The capsule shuddered violently as the entropy swarm began its consumption process. Maya's viewport showed nothing but swirling darkness punctuated by flashes of energy as matter broke down around her. The readings on her control panel painted a terrifying picture. The outer hull was already degrading, molecular bonds breaking apart at an accelerating rate. Integrity at 85%. The computer announced in a calm voice that contrasted sharply with Maya's pounding heart. Estimated time to core penetration, 12 minutes. Estimated capsule failure, 14 minutes. 2 minutes of margin. Not much, but it would have to do. The blade of Cathara hummed against Maya's back, its energy signature intensifying. Through her connection with the sword, she could sense something the instruments could not measure. The swarm was not just consuming her capsule randomly. It was studying it, analyzing it, trying to understand the strange object that tasted different from normal matter. Systems holding, Maya reported over the comm, though she knew the signal was probably not getting through the swarm's mass. Hull degradation within expected parameters. A spike of energy hit the capsule and alarms blared. The swarm had apparently decided to apply more aggressive consumption techniques. Integrity at 70%, the computer said. Adjusting estimate. Time to core, 10 minutes. Time to failure, 11 minutes. The margin was shrinking. Maya's engineering instincts kicked in. She began rerouting power from non-essential systems to the shield generators, buying herself precious seconds. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, making adjustments, compensating for failures, keeping the capsule intact through sheer technical skill. Another impact. The capsule spun wildly. Maya's stomach lurched, but she forced down the nausea and focused on the controls. Integrity at 60%. Time to core, 8 minutes. Time to failure, 9 minutes. Come on, Maya muttered, her fingers dancing across the panel. Just hold together a little longer. The blade of Cathara pulsed more intensely. Maya felt something shift in her awareness. The sword was showing her patterns in the chaos around her. The swarm's consumption was not random. It followed specific algorithms, predictable sequences. If she could anticipate those patterns, she could angle the capsule to take hits on the most reinforced sections. Maya had never piloted anything through combat before, but with the blade guiding her perception, she found herself making micro-adjustments to the capsule's orientation. Each movement was small, barely noticeable, but together they reduced the damage significantly. Integrity at 55%, the computer reported. Adjusting estimates. Time to core, 6 minutes. Time to failure, 10 minutes. The margin was growing again. Maya allowed herself a small smile. They might actually make it. Then everything changed. The darkness around the capsule suddenly shifted from chaotic consumption to something far more deliberate. The swarm stopped trying to break down the capsule and instead began to squeeze it. Pressure increased from all sides simultaneously. The hull groaned under the stress. Warning, the computer said, its calm voice now seeming ominous. External pressure exceeding design specifications. Hull failure imminent in multiple locations. The swarm had realized that simple consumption was not working fast enough. It was changing tactics, trying to crush the capsule like an egg. Maya's mind raced through options. She could not reinforce the hull against this kind of pressure. The structural supports were already at their limits. If she did nothing, the capsule would implode in less than a minute. She closed her eyes and reached out mentally to the blade of Cathara. The sword responded immediately. flooding her consciousness with information. She saw the pressure distribution around the capsule, saw the weak points forming in the hull, saw the exact moment when catastrophic failure would occur. But she also saw something else. The blade showed her that the swarm's pressure was not truly uniform. It had patterns, rhythms, places where the force was slightly less intense. If she could time it perfectly, she could release controlled bursts of energy from the capsule's engines, using the swarm's own pressure to propel her forward faster. It was insane. It meant deliberately weakening her shields at the exact moment the pressure was highest. One miscalculation and she would be crushed instantly. But the blade was certain, and Maya had learned to trust it. Diverting shield power to engines, Maya said, her voice steady despite her fear. Emergency acceleration in 3, 2, 1. She fired the engines at full power while simultaneously dropping the aft shields. The pressure differential was enormous. The capsule shot forward like a bullet from a gun, accelerating so fast that Maya's vision went gray at the edges despite the inertial dampeners. Behind her, the section of swarm she had just occupied collapsed inward violently, crushing the space where she had been a moment before. Integrity at 40%, the computer reported. Time to core, 2 minutes. Time to failure, 4 minutes. Maya had bought herself more time, but the capsule was falling apart. Warning lights covered her control panel. Life support was barely functioning. The viewport had cracked in 3 places. Almost there, Maya whispered. Just a little further. The swarm seemed to sense its prey escaping. The pressure intensified again, but now Maya could read its patterns. She fired the engines in short, controlled bursts, using the swarm's force against itself, surfing the waves of destructive energy toward the core. Her training with the blade had taught her to see problems as systems to be understood, rather than obstacles to be overcome. The swarm was just another system. Complex, hostile, deadly, but still following rules. And where there were rules, there were solutions. Core detected, the computer announced. Distance 30 seconds at current velocity. Maya could see it now through the cracked viewport. The core was a sphere of concentrated energy, pulsing with malevolent intelligence. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a star die. Integrity at 25%. Critical failure in 60 seconds. Maya unbuckled her safety harness and reached for the blade of Cathara. The moment her hand touched the hilt, power surged through her. The sword was ready. It had been waiting 500 years for this moment. Here we go, Maya said. The capsule's hull finally gave way. Sections of the craft peeled away like paper in a hurricane. The swarm's consuming energy rushed in, reaching for Maya with hungry tendrils. But Maya was already moving. She kicked off from the disintegrating capsule, the blade of Cathara blazing with light in her hand. The swarm's energy lashed at her, trying to break her down at the molecular level. The blade's power enveloped her in a protective field. Not a shield exactly, but something more fundamental. The sword was rewriting the rules of physics in the space immediately around Maya, creating a bubble where the swarm's consumption algorithms could not function. Maya flew toward the core, the blade pulling her forward through the hostile environment. Around her, the swarm writhed and fought, but it could not touch her. She reached the core's surface. Up close, it was massive, easily 100 meters in diameter. The energy radiating from it was so intense that Maya's suit alarms were screaming warnings about lethal radiation levels. How do I destroy this thing? Maya asked the blade. The sword answered by showing her the core's structure. It was not solid matter. It was a quantum probability matrix, existing in multiple states simultaneously. The core was the swarm's processing center, the intelligence that coordinated billions of consumption events across thousands of cubic kilometers. To destroy it, Maya would need to collapse all those probability states into a single fatal outcome, and the only way to do that was to introduce something the core's algorithms could not predict. The blade pulsed with anticipation. It had been designed for exactly this purpose. Maya raised the blade of Cathara above her head. The sword's energy built to impossible levels, drawing power not just from Maya but from the fabric of space-time itself. The inscriptions along the blade blazed like supernovae. For everyone counting on me, Maya whispered. For all the worlds. For all the lives. She brought the blade down. The blade of Cathara struck the core's surface and reality screamed. The sword did not cut through matter. It cut through probability itself. Every possible future the core had calculated, every outcome it had predicted, every certainty it had relied upon, the blade severed them all. It introduced pure chaos into a system built on absolute order. The core convulsed. Its carefully maintained quantum states collapsed into paradox. Calculations that should have resolved in microseconds became infinite loops. The intelligence that had coordinated the entropy swarm fragmented into contradictory commands. Maya felt the blade drawing more power through her, using her as a conduit. The sword was not just destroying the core. It was rewriting the fundamental algorithms that allowed the swarm to exist. Every line of destructive code was being overwritten with creative potential. Where there had been consumption, the blade planted seeds of growth. Where there had been entropy, it introduced order. Where there had been death, it created the possibility of life. The core's surface cracked. Light poured out. Not the dark energy of the swarm, but something pure and bright. The crack spread rapidly across the entire sphere. Maya, whatever you are doing, it is working. Vexthor's voice suddenly came through her suit's comm. The signal was getting through again. The swarm is collapsing across all fronts. We are reading cascading failures throughout its structure. Maya did not respond. She could not. Every ounce of her focus was on maintaining her connection with the blade as it completed its work. The sword was using her mind, her creativity, her human ability to imagine possibilities that had never existed before. The core exploded, but it was not a destructive explosion. It was transformative. The energy that had powered the entropy swarm's consumption burst outward as waves of creative force. Everywhere the waves touched, the swarm's matter broke down. But instead of dissolving into nothing, it reformed into new patterns. Elements recombined, molecules restructured. Matter organized itself into increasingly complex forms. Maya was thrown backward by the force of the transformation. She tumbled through space, barely conscious, the blade of Cathara still clutched in her hand. Through her fading awareness, she saw the swarm dying, saw it transforming from a force of destruction into clouds of raw matter and energy that would someday become stars, planets, perhaps even life. The blade had not just destroyed the threat, it had turned it into potential. Got you, a voice said. Strong mechanical arms caught Maya. She looked up to see a rescue craft, its bay doors open, a Dracon pilot reaching out to pull her inside. You actually did it, the pilot said, awe in his voice. You saved us all. Maya wanted to respond, but exhaustion overwhelmed her. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was the blade of Cathara's light fading to a gentle glow, like a job well done. Maya woke in a medical bay aboard the assembly flagship. Her body ached, and her head felt like it had been used as a percussion instrument, but she was alive. More importantly, according to the readings on the monitors around her bed, she was remarkably healthy considering what she had just been through. The blade of Cathara rested on a table beside her bed, still refusing to be separated from her. Welcome back, Zintara said from a chair in the corner. The scholar's bioluminescence pulsed with warm colors. You have been unconscious for 2 days. Did it work? Maya asked, her voice hoarse. Is the swarm really gone? Completely. Every trace of it has been eliminated across all known space. More than that, the matter it had consumed is reforming into stable structures. Scientists are already detecting the formation of new stellar nurseries in areas where the swarm had been most active. Maya processed this information. The blade did not just kill it. It transformed it. Yes, that appears to be the blade of Cathara's true purpose. Not destruction, but transformation. Turning entropy into potential. Zintara moved closer to the bed. We have been wrong about the blade for 500 years. We thought it was a weapon. But weapons destroy. The blade creates. It's a tool, Maya said, understanding fully now. Like any tool, it depends on how you use it and who uses it. That's why it rejected all those warriors. It was not looking for someone who wanted to destroy. It was looking for someone who wanted to build. An engineer, Zintara said with a sound that might have been her species' equivalent of a laugh. The galaxy's salvation came from someone who fixes communications equipment. Maya smiled weakly. To be fair, I'm probably never going to hear the end of that at work. Over the following weeks, Maya recovered fully. The Galactic Assembly held a massive ceremony in her honor, but she found the whole thing deeply uncomfortable. Speeches about heroism and destiny made her squirm. She had not done anything special, just applied engineering principles to an unusual problem. The blade of Cathara, however, seemed to enjoy the attention. It gleamed brightly throughout the ceremony, as if pleased with itself. After the official celebrations ended, Maya met with Vexthor and the Assembly leadership to discuss what came next. The blade remains bonded to you, Vexthor explained. As long as you live, you are its wielder. The question is, what do you intend to do with that responsibility? Maya had been thinking about this. I want to go back to my old life. I'm not a soldier or a champion. I'm an engineer who got lucky. Someone else can be the hero. The galaxy may have other threats, Zintara pointed out gently. Other crises where the blade's power might be needed. Then I'll help when I'm needed, Maya said. But I'm not going to spend my life waiting for disasters. I have work to do, places to see, systems to repair. She looked at the blade, and apparently I have a very persistent sword that comes with me now. Vexthor's crystalline body refracted light in patterns that suggested approval. That is remarkably practical. Most who gain such power become consumed by it. You treat it as an inconvenient tool that occasionally proves useful. Because that's what it is, Maya said. A tool. An amazing, reality-altering, universe-saving tool, sure. But still just a tool. It's what you do with tools that matters. The Assembly granted Maya's request to return to civilian life, though they made her promise to respond if another major crisis arose. She agreed, hoping she would never get that call. Maya returned to her job with the Interstellar Communications Consortium. Her supervisor was confused about her 2-month absence, but the Assembly had apparently smoothed things over with some very generous contracts. Just try not to disappear again, her supervisor said. We need reliable people. I'll do my best, Maya promised. The blade of Cathara strapped to her back under her work jacket. She went back to fixing communications relays, calibrating antenna arrays, and troubleshooting network problems. The work was familiar and comforting. No prophecies, no destiny, just honest engineering. But things were different now. Word of what Maya had done spread throughout the galaxy. Humans, previously seen as unremarkable newcomers, were suddenly viewed with new respect. If one human could wield the blade of Cathara and save the galaxy, what else might humanity be capable of? Other species began to reconsider their assumptions. Maybe physical strength was not the only measure of worth. Maybe wisdom was not just about knowledge, but about knowing what questions to ask. Maybe the greatest champions were not always the ones who looked most impressive. Maya noticed the change in how aliens treated her during her work. More respect, certainly, but also more curiosity. They asked her questions about human culture, human thinking, human approaches to problems. She answered honestly, explaining that humans were not special, just different. Every species had their strengths. 6 months after the Entropy Swarm's defeat, Maya was working on a relay station in the outer reaches when she received an unexpected visitor. A young Dracon named Krelson, son of the War Master who had attempted to claim the blade before Maya, approached her workspace. Maya Torres, he said formally, I wish to learn from you. Maya looked up from the circuit board she was repairing. Learn what? Engineering? Know how to think like you think. My father trained me to be a warrior, to solve problems through strength and courage. But strength could not claim the blade. Strength could not stop the swarm. You did both, not through power, but through understanding. He paused, uncertain. My father says I must learn to see problems differently. He recommended I ask you to teach me. Maya was surprised. War Master Krelnak had been one of her harshest critics during training. Your father wants you to learn from me? He says he was wrong about many things. About strength, about worthiness, about what makes a true champion. He says the blade taught the galaxy a lesson we needed to learn. Maya considered this. She was not a teacher. She barely understood her own methods well enough to explain them to others, but looking at this young warrior seeking to change his perspective, she remembered her own uncertainty when first chosen by the blade. All right, Maya said, but I'm not going to teach you to fight or wield power or any of that. I'm going to teach you to ask better questions. That is what I came for, Krelson said, bowing his head respectfully. Over the following months, Maya found herself mentoring not just Krelson, but others who came seeking to understand the approach that had succeeded where traditional methods failed. She taught them to see problems as systems, to look for patterns, to question assumptions, and to value understanding over force. The blade of Cathara seemed pleased with this development. It remained bonded to Maya but no longer hummed with constant urgency. It was content, as if its purpose was being fulfilled not through dramatic battles but through the quiet work of changing perspectives. A year after defeating the Entropy Swarm, Maya returned to Earth for the first time since becoming the Blade's wielder. She visited her family, walked the streets of her hometown, and reminded herself of her roots. Her younger brother asked her what it felt like to be a hero. "I'm not a hero," Maya said. "I'm just an engineer who got handed a problem and worked through it the best way I knew how." "The Blade did most of the heavy lifting." "But you saved the galaxy," her brother insisted. "I helped solve a problem," Maya corrected. "There's a difference. Heroes are people who do impossible things. I just did what needed doing with the tools available. That's not heroism. That's just competence." Her brother thought about this. "Maybe we need more competent people and fewer heroes," Maya smiled. "Now you're thinking like an engineer." Back at her apartment that evening, Maya sat on her balcony watching the sunset. The blade of Cathara rested against the railing beside her, its metal catching the golden light. "You know," Maya said to the sword, "I've been thinking about why you chose me. Zintara thinks it's because I see problems differently. Vexthor thinks it's because I question everything. Korval thinks it's because I treat challenges as puzzles to solve rather than enemies to defeat." The blade pulsed softly, listening. "I think it's simpler than that," Maya continued. "You chose me because I was willing to admit I didn't know the answer. All those champions who tried before me, they came with certainty. They knew they were worthy. They knew they would succeed. But I came with doubt and curiosity. I didn't know if I was worthy. I still don't." The blade's glow intensified slightly, and maybe that's the point. Maybe the strongest person isn't the one who never doubts, but the one who doubts and tries anyway. Maybe real wisdom isn't knowing all the answers, but knowing which questions to ask. Maya looked out at the sunset, at the world she had helped save. The universe is complicated and messy and full of problems we don't understand. But that's okay. We don't need to have all the answers. We just need to keep asking questions, keep trying solutions, keep learning from our mistakes. The blade of Cathara hummed in agreement, its tone almost musical. "Thanks for choosing me," Maya said quietly. "Even if you did completely disrupt my life and turn me into someone who occasionally has to save the galaxy. It's been interesting." The sword pulsed once more warmly and then settled into peaceful silence. Below, the city lights began to twinkle on as evening descended. Somewhere out in the galaxy, problems awaited solutions. Challenges that would need facing. Questions that demanded answers. But for now, Maya Torres, engineer and reluctant wielder of the blade of Cathara, simply enjoyed the sunset. Tomorrow would bring new problems to solve. Tonight she could rest. The blade had waited 500 years to find her. It could wait until morning for whatever came next. And in the quiet of that evening, both sword and wielder understood something fundamental about the universe. The greatest power was not the ability to destroy or dominate. It was the ability to understand, to adapt and to create. Maya had not defeated the entropy swarm through strength. She had transformed it through creativity. She had not mastered the blade of Cathara through force. She had partnered with it through understanding. That was the lesson the blade had waited centuries to teach. That was why it had chosen a human engineer over 12,000 champions. Not because humans were stronger or smarter, or more powerful than other species, but because humans had never forgotten how to doubt, how to question, and how to imagine that maybe, just maybe, there was always another way to solve the problem. And in a universe full of challenges, that was the most powerful ability of all.